Hello, Year 10. So this lesson is all about the Abyssinian Crisis, which carries on nicely from the Manchurian Crisis. So the first task I want you to do in this lesson is to put these events from the Manchurian Crisis into correct chronological order. Try and do this without looking at the answers that are on the next slide. Maybe just do it in your head or make some notes from it. Just really good revision, especially for that question 3, where you have to be able to really explain the order that events took place. And there you can see are some of the answers to the Manchurian Crisis chronology exercise. So anyway, in this lesson, you're going to be looking at the significance of the Abyssinian Crisis, which took place in 1935. And this lesson involves the Italian leader, Mussolini, who we found out about before. He became the leader of Italy in 1922. And if you remember, think back to our lessons in the 1920s on the League of Nations, Italy invaded Corfu in 1923, so this was quite a significant thing. So Italy had already proved itself to be quite an aggressive foreign power during this time. And a bit of context of the Abyssinian Crisis was that Mussolini, he had really a desire to create an empire for Italy, which would be perhaps similar to the Roman Empire of old. And he saw Abyssinia as a target for him to expand his territory within East Africa. So we're going to look at that today, why Italy invaded Abyssinia, how the League responded. And this is very much the final nail in the coffin, really, of the League of Nations. A very, very significant event, the Abyssinian Crisis. So obviously this is the big picture. We know about Japan invading Manchuria. We know about the Italian invasion of Abyssinia. So two really significant events that you really need a lot about for this course. So where is Abyssinia? So if you just have a little look, Abyssinia is here. It's on the east coast of Africa. And it's now known as Ethiopia. And if you just familiarise yourself a little bit with some of the geography, Italy at the time already owned this territory, Eritrea, and also Italian Somaliland. And also what's going to be significant is this piece of land here called the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal at the time was controlled really by Britain. And if they'd closed off the Suez Canal to Italian boats, it would have made it almost impossible for Italy to gain control of Abyssinia. We can see here's Italy. So this is the route through really that Italy would take. Down here is the arrows following in order to get to Abyssinia. So it's not too far really away from Italy. So that's where Abyssinia is. So just familiarise yourself of that. So the first question I want you to do is try and make some notes to answer the question, why did Italy invade Abyssinia? Use the ideas on the PowerPoint to help you, and you can flick through the PowerPoint. You can download that through Teams as well. And then there's a couple of videos for you to watch. So if you download the PowerPoint, if you just click on these links, you can watch the video. The first is from Simple History, and the second is from an old BBC programme. Both very, very good programmes that I can heartily recommend, actually. Yes, it's good to watch some of those YouTube videos. Quite a lot of stuff really on YouTube for this course. So feel free to browse some other educational videos on YouTube as well. So when you've written some notes about why Italy invaded Abyssinia, just check that you've got some of these key points there. You can see some of the context there. This is all about Mussolini as a fascist dictator, really wanting to prove how strong he was, and obviously had those nationalistic ideas in a similar way too as well. You then need to make a timeline of the main events of how Mussolini went about invading Abyssinia. There's this border clash at a place called Wawal with Italian soldiers. The League tries to intervene. You also need to know about this address that Haile Selassie makes the League of Nations in Geneva in June 1935. Now, Haile Selassie was the emperor of Abyssinia, and if you put that into YouTube, you can watch some clips of his speech about that. So just make sure you know about that, particularly for question 3. We're talking about having clear beginning, middle, and ends. That's going to be very, very useful for you to know the key events of Mussolini invading Abyssinia. You then need to know how the League responded to the Abyssinian Crisis. Now, the key thing really here is that Britain and France, they tend to follow things that will help their own countries, and they're not really too fussed about using the League of Nations to sort the problem. So one of the key things about the Abyssinian Crisis is that Britain and France try to solve the problems themselves. There's some secret agreements that are made. And particularly, this is significant, the Hall-Laval Pact, named after Samuel Hall and Pierre Laval of France. Samuel Hall was from Britain. The foreign ministers, they came up with an agreement to basically offer Italy some of the territory from Abyssinia, basically the good territory, which had fertile farmland and resources, and to allow Abyssinia to keep what was not really particularly the best territory. They didn't discuss this with either Italy or Abyssinia, so it was pretty controversial. The trade sanctions were half-hearted. They didn't close the Suez Canal. They also used trade sanctions against Abyssinia, which meant that they could not defend themselves against Italy. So the League wasn't really able to respond well to the Abyssinian crisis, and Britain and France's actions in this are absolutely pivotal. As I said about the Suez Canal, the fact that Britain and France failed to close the Suez Canal was really, really significant. And I think one of the things to give this context and read about this is that in 1935, Britain and France signed an agreement with Italy called the Stretta Front to really kind of get those three of them to work together against Germany. And I think really at the time, Britain and France saw Germany as the main threat, and they almost wanted to appease Italy at this time to keep Mussolini on side and to keep him as a key ally. It was a huge. So we can see here this failure to close the Suez Canal is very, very significant, because that would have closed off the route for the Italians to actually get through to Abyssinia, which is here in green on the east coast of Africa. One of the things to look at is the view of different sources. We've come across the cartoonist David Lowe quite a lot. This one is about a bus. It portrays the League of Nations as a bus, and you've got there, you can't really read it very clearly here, but the bus, the route that it's taken is Corfu, Manchuria, Abyssinia, Czechoslovakia and Poland, reminding everyone of the League of Nations failures. And basically the cartoon, written in 1939, this is talking about how the League of Nations has basically failed, and that it's not really going anywhere is the metaphor here, just like a bus that's travelling around with lots of people on it but not really doing anything. David Lowe's a bit of a classic cartoonist, to be honest. Really, really good cartoons, and they often come up actually on exam questions, but it's really interesting cartoonist as well. So really, the Abyssinian Crisis heralds the end of the League of Nations, and next lesson that we do, we'll be looking at why the League of Nations failed. So Italy leaves the League of Nations. Britain, France and the USSR are kind of running the League, but they're not particularly effective. So it really is, I would suggest the Abyssinian Crisis is more significant really than the Manchurian Crisis, because Italy was one of the major European countries at the time. So after it, most countries felt that they couldn't get any benefit from the League of Nations. So that's really why it's significant. This cartoon, I think, is very significant. Another one by classic cartoonist David Lowe. The cartoon is entitled "The Man Who Lifted the Lid," and you can see here that really this shows all the kind of problems that are being created in the world, that Mussolini, by invading Abyssinia, has sort of lifted the lid on all the sort of bad things in the world. And this event, undoubtedly, when we study some of the causes of the Second World War, this event undoubtedly encouraged people like Hitler to go against the League of Nations and the Treaty of Versailles as well. So it's a big cause, really, Second World War. So that's a review of what we've learned in the lesson, a little bit of a timeline there to help you, some key individuals there as well, just to check that you know who those people are that we've covered, and some keywords and concepts that we've kind of gone through today. As usual, if you've got any questions, do let me know. Thanks for listening and following this online lesson on the Abyssinian Crisis. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.